there have been, as I understand it, dozens of studies done all over the world that make it very clear that vaccines do not cause autism. Now, you just said, if I heard correctly, well, if the evidence is there. The evidence is there. That's it. Vaccines do not cause autism. Do you agree with that?
As I said, I'm not going to go into HHS with any preordained.
I asked you a simple question, Bobby. The studies all over the world say it does not. What do you think?
Senator, if you show me those studies, I will absolutely, as I promised to Chairman Cassidy, I will apologize.
That is a very troubling response because the studies are there. Your job was to have looked at those studies as an applicant for this job. All right. Let me ask you another question about this one about COVID. Scientists with the Yale School of Public Health and University of Maryland have estimated that the COVID vaccine saved 3 million lives and prevented 18 million hospitalizations. President Trump, someone who I do not often agree with, has said that the COVID vaccine was, quote, one of the greatest miracles of the ages. That's Donald Trump. But Bobby, you had a very different perspective. At a time when thousands of Americans were dying from COVID every week in May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to revoke the emergency use of COVID vaccines. So my question to you is, were the scientists who told us that the COVID vaccine was imperative and President Trump who told us that it was this great thing, were they right or were you right when you told people that they should not take COVID shots?
Senator, I filed that lawsuit after CDC recommended the vaccine for 6-year-old children without any evidence that it would benefit them and without testing on 6-year-old children. And that was my reason for filing that lawsuit.
Was the vaccine, COVID vaccine, successful in saving millions of lives?
I don't know. We don't have a good surveillance system, unfortunately.
We don't know?
I don't think anybody can say that. If you show me science that says that.
You know, Bobby, you say, if I show you, you're applying for the job. I mean, clearly, you should know this. And that is, the scientific community has established that COVID vaccines save millions of lives, and you're casting doubt. That is really problematic. All right, let me ask you another question on another subject. My Republican colleagues and President Trump are moving toward making massive cuts into Medicaid in order to provide tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country. As I'm sure you know, Medicaid provides health insurance to tens of millions of children, provides the funding for 2 out of every 3 seniors in nursing homes. It provides 43% of the revenue for community health centers, something I feel very strongly about. And it is so important for millions of people. If confirmed, in terms of making America healthy again, will you stand up to the White House and say, no, we cannot throw millions of children off of health care, millions of elderly people out of nursing homes. We cannot cut Medicaid to give tax breaks to billionaires.
President Trump has made no indication to me that he intends to throw millions of people out of nursing home or deprive people of their health care, Senator. We have a health care system that's broken. It's not working. You've been working on it your entire career. As Americans get less and less healthier, as premiums rose.
Bobby, I believe the healthcare system is broken. We
agree on that. He has asked me to fix it.
But
so
do you fix it?
The American people.
But my colleagues here, certainly in the House of Representatives, are prepared to make massive cuts in Medicaid. Now, I happen to believe in a Medicare for all system that guarantees health care to all people. Not what we're talking about. But in fact, there is serious discussion of massive cuts to Medicaid, which will have devastating harm on children, people in nursing homes. All I am asking you, if that proposal goes through, will you say, hey, you're not keeping America healthy by throwing children off of health care?
Senator, I haven't seen any of the congressional proposals. I can only tell you what President Trump has told me, which is that he wants me to make Medicaid, Medicare, and Obamacare better.
Well, if you haven't seen those proposals, I suggest you go to any newspaper. They're there.
Mr. Kennedy, let me start by talking about vaccines. I think we all agree that cancer is particularly nefarious chronic disease. And the American Cancer Society reported earlier this month that women under 50 are experiencing a dramatic increase in the incidence of that disease. Fortunately, there is clear data showing that the HPV vaccine has saved lives and cut cervical cancer rates dramatically. You have called the HPV vaccine, quote, dangerous and effective, and said it actually increases the risk of cervical cancer. Do you stand by those statements, yes or no?
The HPV vaccine, I brought litigation. I
Yes or
represented.
no?
I represented.
Stand by your statements.
Let me answer.
I'm trying to,
Senator.
yes or no? It's a simple yes or no.
I
Stand by your previous statement.
litigated on that issue. I represented hundreds of young girls who felt that they were injured by the vaccine. That trial is happening right now in Los Angeles.
Well, let me
Those
ask you.
questions will be answered by a jury in that trial.
You said that no loving parents would allow their daughter to receive that vaccine. If confirmed as HHS Secretary, would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against HPV?
I recommend that children follow the CDC schedule. And I will support the CDC schedule when I get in there, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed.
Would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against the measles? Yes or no?
Against measles? Yes.
Well, I just remind everybody that parents look to our health leaders for advice on these decisions. You would be a health leader, and for the record, I would like to put into the record his previous statements on these vaccines. I do want to ask you a question about character. I still believe character matters, and I want to let you respond to this. You were accused of sexual harassment and assault by Eliza Cooney, who was first hired as a part-time babysitter by your family. When you were confronted about this accusation, you said you were, quote, not a church boy, and that you, quote, have so many skeletons in my closet. You then texted Ms. Cooney an apology and indicated you had no memory of what she described. Mr. Kennedy, I'm asking you to respond to those accusations seriously in front of this committee. Did you make sexual advances towards Ms. Cooney without her consent?
No, I did not. And that story has been debunked.
But why did you apologize to her then?
I apologize for something else.
Well, that's not my understanding. Are there, let me just ask you.
All you have to read is the text which she published. It's not for that.
That is not how I've read it. Are there any other instances where you have made sexual advances towards an individual without their consent? Just yes or no?
No.
No. Mr. Kennedy, you said that you're going to say to NIH scientists, God bless you all, thank you for your public service. We're going to give infectious disease a break for 8 years.
Excuse me?
You said you just said thank you for your service to our federal employees. You want to give infectious disease a break, that's a quote. Will you support the development and distribution of vaccines for the avian flu, yes or no?
Will I, for the avian flu? Yes.
My time's almost up, but having read a lot and listened to a lot, I just want to remind all my colleagues that by voting to confirm Mr. Kennedy, we would be telling our constituents he's worth listening to. That alone could get people killed before he even lifts a finger, because he does not even need the levers of power to influence people, as we saw in Samoa. All he needs is a megaphone. To affirm his views by voting to confirm him as our highest health official, we should not mince words about what that would mean. When babies die from whooping cough because parents weren't sure if the vaccine was safe, we will have to look them in the eye. When measles sweeps through school, then hospitals, nursing wards, will this be worth it? There are political realities, we all get that, but there's also right and wrong, fact and fiction. And there's also people staying healthy or dying pointlessly from diseases we can prevent because they thought Congress took its job vetting our healthcare secretary seriously.
When we talked, we were talking a bit about vaccines at the end of our meeting, And you said really to me that there's no post-approval safety monitoring. And that led me to believe that you're not aware of the significant and ongoing safety monitoring that occurs after years of rigorous studies showing vaccines to be safe and effective. And so I want to give you the opportunity to set the record straight here. Are you aware of the measures in place throughout Health and Human Services to ensure vaccine safety after approval? Yes or no?
I'm aware of the VAERS system, which CDC admits it captures fewer than 1% of vaccine injuries.
So you are aware of the
I'm also
CDC
aware of-
monitoring? Are you aware of the FDA post-approval monitoring?
I'm aware of only 2 systems.
Are you aware of the vaccine safety data link?
Oh, yeah, I'm very aware of that.
Are you aware of the vaccine adverse event reporting system?
I'm aware of the vaccine safety data link that CDC keeps under a lockbox and will not let independent scientists
Are you
look at it.
aware of the clinical immunization safety assessment project?
As I said,
Are you aware of VSafe?
I'm aware that they're broken, and I can explain to you how each one of those is broken if you're interested. What I want to do is make sure we have gold standard science. We get the conflicts off the panels so that people, you know, there's Congress.
What I listed right now are just some of the guardrails that are in place to ensure that life-saving vaccines are safe and effective. And this is after numerous clinical trials, rigorous studies, and review by an independent panel of experts that show vaccines are safe and effective, which is available to all the public. If you want to take a second look at the science, like you have said, well, it's here, it's available, and it's conclusive. And saying anything else is undermining vaccines. To a different
And by the way, repeating what Congress found in the 2003 investigation.
Kennedy, I want to move to what I hope it will be pretty simple stuff. In general, for a drug to be considered safe, would you say that 97, 98% of people taking that drug and having no complications is generally safe?
It would completely depend on what the drug is. If it's a drug given to a healthy population, that would not be an
Again,
acceptable.
this is as high a level as it gets. Would you say that when 99 out of 100 people experience minimal or no complications, that that drug is safe?
It depends what the risk is from the disease. It depends what the benefit from the drug is. If you're dying of cancer, you will take a drug with that kind of risk profile.
And if we were to
If you're a
talk
healthy
about
individual with zero,
peer-reviewed,
if you're a healthy individual with zero
I'm talking
risk,
about mifepristone, but if we were to talk about peer-reviewed, replicable studies of a medication, would you say that you needed 10 trusted studies to get the same conclusion?
it depends what the
20 trusted studies?
It depends what the
What's your number?
It completely depends on the kind of study. You're talking about randomized studies or observational studies.
Is it safe to assume that 100 studies that are replicable and peer-reviewed is enough?
Well, it could be one study if it was a powerful enough study.
The most widely used medication, abortion drug, mifepristone, has been FDA approved for nearly 25 years. More than 100 studies have confirmed that 99% of patients who took the abortion pill had no complications. So with all of that, I can only conclude that you would commit to keep this science-backed and proven medication on the market and accessible for women. Is that correct?
I'm going to, with mifepristone, President Trump has not chosen a policy, and I will implement his policy.
So regardless of the studies, regardless of the data, regardless of the science, you've been talking about, show me the data, show me the studies.
Well, if you
would have that policy
Senator,
regardless of what the science says.
Senator, the devil is in the details. If you're telling me 99% of women did okay, but 1% died, I would say that is not a beneficial risk profile.
That is not what the studies show.
Just a couple of months ago, you posted this on your X account. On 9/11, it's hard to tell what is conspiracy theory and what isn't. I'd like to introduce that for the record, Mr. Chair. We take that kind of stuff pretty personally. Virginians know what happened on 9/11. We don't need folks giving oxygen to conspiracy theories about 9/11. Now, one thing I noticed about this post is it was in July of 2024. It was 23 years after 9/11. You had a lot going on in your life. You were running for president then. What made you decide, in the midst of everything going on in this country and this world in July of 2024 and your own candidacy for president, that now was the time to say it's hard to tell what is conspiracy and what isn't about 9/11? What was so important about making this point in July of 2024?
Senator, the dramatic drop in trust in our government, and this is particularly one of the templates for that is what happened at CDC.
Yeah, no, I want to move aside from that. Because you say, you go on to say, I won't take sides. As president, I won't take sides on 9/11. Wow. I won't take sides on 9/11. Let me ask you this. As a general matter, do you find it hard to tell what is a conspiracy theory and what isn't? Is that kind of a general deficit that you find in your own analytical abilities?
My father told me when I was 13 years old, he said, people in authority lie, and that the job of a citizen in every democracy is to maintain a fierce skepticism
Okay, I get it.
of government authority.
And you're an authority, but you wouldn't take sides on 9/11, and you're admitting, I have a hard time telling what is a conspiracy theory and what isn't.
Senator, I haven't investigated it. If the things that I investigate, I take sides on, people are allowed to hold that opinion. I'm not going to tell them they're crazy for holding that opinion. I'm going to say, what is your evidence? And if I hear the evidence, I'm going to say, that doesn't make any sense.
So you won't take sides on 9/11. Wow. Senator Murray asked you some questions about Gardasil, and this is a vaccine that's manufactured in Virginia. There's other HPV vaccines. I'm going to enter into the record a whole series of studies from many, many nations that talk about the dramatic positive effect of Gardasil. Could I introduce those into the record, Mr. Chair?
Without objection.
And those studies are on trial
let me ask
right
a question.
now.
Let me ask a question. These are studies from Scotland, Sweden, the UK, Australia, the United States, multiple studies. And then I'm going to introduce in the record, I guess it's a blog post of yours. The verdict is now inescapable. Gardasil is killing girls. And I'd like to introduce that into the record as well.
Without objection.
You have a pretty significant financial interest in litigation against Gardasil. You have received contingency fees and payments for referring people to lawyers suing the manufacturer. And in your ethics vetting...
I've never received any money from any Gardasil or any other vaccine lawsuit.
Let me read a quote. This is your words. In your ethics vetting for this nomination, you said, quote, pursuant to the referral agreement, I'm entitled to receive 10% of fees awarded in contingency cases referred to the firm. How can folks who need to have confidence in federal vaccine programs trust you to be independent and science-based when you stand to gain significant funding if lawsuits against vaccine manufacturers are successful?
I have given away all of my rights to any fees in that lawsuit.
Credibility matters so much when you lead the most important health agency in the world. The Secretary of HHS has got to be trusted that he's telling the truth, that he cares about science, has no political agenda. Mr. Kennedy, I want to go back to some of your testimony yesterday before the Finance Committee when you either feigned ignorance about some very clear statements that you have made in the past, or you outright denied saying things about the vaccine program that you have undoubtedly said. And so with a day's hindsight, I want to give you another chance to be honest about the things that you have said. Senator Warnock asked you yesterday if you had compared America's vaccine program to the Catholic Church's pedophilia scandal. You said you never said that. Now, I'm not asking you to explain what you said.
I didn't say it, never said that.
You didn't say that. Senator
I did
Warnock,
not say that I hadn't said that, Senator. I said the other question you asked me about Nazi death camps.
That's fine. You're doubling down on that. You said Senator Warnock also asked you if you compared America's vaccine campaign to the Nazi death camps and the Holocaust. Again, you said yesterday you didn't say that.
I did not say that.
You did not say that. Senator Bennett asked you yesterday if you had made an allegation that AIDS is a different disease in Africa than it is in America. On that one, you said you didn't recall. Having had a day to think about it, do you recall saying that AIDS is a different disease in Africa than it is in the United States?
I looked up that passage in my book and found that indeed the diagnostics for AIDS are very different in Africa than in the United States, that the list of symptoms is almost completely different.
So let me just, I'll submit this for the record, but having denied the first two statements, let me just read what you said. You said in 2013, is it hyperbole to say that the people who run our vaccine programs should be in jail? They should be in jail. To me, this is like Nazi death camps. Look at what it does to the families who participate in the vaccine program. I can't tell why somebody would do something like that. I can't tell you why ordinary Germans participated in the Holocaust. I can't tell you what was going on in their minds. With respect to the pedophilia scandal, you said the pedophilia scandal in the Catholic Church is a perfect metaphor for what's happening in the United States. The vaccine program, it's the same reason we had a pedophilia scandal in the Catholic Church. It's because people were able to convince themselves that the institution of the church was more important than these little boys and girls who were being raped. I don't disagree with Senator Mullen. I don't want an HHS secretary that's not going to question science. I think it's important to question science. But you're not questioning science. You've made up your mind. You have spent your entire career undermining America's vaccine program. You make these purposeful comparisons to those that are administering the vaccine program to the Nazi executioners, to the people who covered up the Catholic Church's pedophilia scandal, because you have made a decision that there is a comparison, that there is evil in the vaccine program as there was evil in the pedophilia scandal and the Nazi death camps. You aren't exploring science. You have made up your mind. You've spent your entire career trying to undermine these programs. And so the reason that these statements, these incredibly aggressive, over-the-top statements, matter to us is because it just isn't believable that when you become secretary, you are all of a sudden going to be consistent with science. People who have spent their career saying these kinds of things, running the kinds of campaigns that you have run, don't all of a sudden change their stripes. And so, Mr. Chairman, I will submit these statements.
Can I respond to that, Senator?
Without objection.
My statement about the Catholic Church is almost identical to the findings of the Government Oversight Investigation Committee that investigated CDC's vaccine program in 2003. Senator Burton was chairman of that committee. And he said that that certain individuals in that program had written off a generation of kids because of, quote, misplaced institutional loyalty to the CDC and because of entanglements with the drug companies. Let me finish what I'm saying. You made some grave accusations.
Pedophilia to the administration of vaccines?
No, it wasn't pedophilia.
So it was a perfect metaphor.
Well, if you have 1 in 36 kids who has neurological injuries, and if that is, linked, that's something that we should study.
Is it a perfect metaphor?
It's not a perfect metaphor, but there's no metaphor that's perfect. But I am pro-vaccine. I am going to support the vaccine program. I want kids to be healthy. And I'm coming in here to get rid of the conflicts of interest within the agency, to make sure that we have gold standard evidence-based science. And if you show me where I'm wrong on this, show me a single statement I've made about science that is erroneous.
One of the things that was most disturbing to me about yesterday's hearing was the suggestion from some of my friends on the other side of the dais that our intense questioning and concerns about Mr. Kennedy were driven by partisanship. I have voted for 5 of President Trump's nominees to date in the last couple of weeks. One of them, the new Secretary of Transportation, was on the scene last night at DCA. Like all of us, I take really seriously our obligation for advice and consent. And I am concerned, as Senator Mullen expressed his concern, about the need for science to help us move forward on critical issues. Now, some of you are new to this committee and new to the Senate, so you may not know that I am the proud mother of a 36-year-old young man with severe cerebral palsy. And a day does not go by when I don't think about what did I do when I was pregnant with him that might have caused the hydrocephalus that has so impacted his life. So please do not suggest that anybody in this body of either political party doesn't want to know what the cause of autism is. Do you know how many friends I have with children who have autism? The problem with this witness's response on the autism cause and the relationship to vaccines is because he's relitigating and churning settled science so we can't go forward and find out what the cause of autism is and treat these kids and help these families. Mr. Kennedy, that first autism study rocked my world. And like every mother, I worried about whether, in fact, the vaccine had done something to my son. And you know what? It was a tiny study of about 12 kids. And over time, the scientific community studied and studied and studied and found that it was wrong. And the journal retracted the study. Because sometimes science is wrong. We make progress. We build on the work and we become more successful. And when you continue to sow doubt about settled science, it makes it impossible for us to move forward. So that's what the problem is here. It's the relitigating and rehashing and continuing to sow doubt so we can't move forward. And it freezes us in place. Now let me move on to my other concerns from yesterday's hearing. During yesterday's hearing, you really showed a lack of knowledge about Medicare and Medicaid. So what is Medicare Part A?
Medicare Part A pays mainly for primary care or physicians, and then Medicare.
No, so it is about, Medicare Part A is seniors coverage for inpatient hospital care. What's Medicare Part B?
For physicians and doctors. Medicare Part D
That is coverage for outpatient care and home health. So what is Medicare Part C?
Medicare Part C is a program where it's the full menu of all the services, A, B, C, and D for Medicare.
It is Medicare Advantage, which it's the private insurance option for seniors on Medicare. So, Mr. Kennedy, you want us to confirm you to be in charge of Medicare, but it appears that you don't know the basics of this program. So let's turn to Medicaid.
The basics.
No, I had to correct you on several things.
Oh, you
let's
just
turn
added
to Medicaid. Yesterday,
Senator, you didn't
said
correct me. I didn't get it wrong.
Mr. Kennedy, my time is limited, and I hope the chair will give me
Is
a
this
couple of more
question,
minutes.
Senator?
Yes, Medicaid.
All right, because you're
let's
giving me
turn
very
to
little
Medicaid.
time to answer one.
Let's turn to Medicaid. Medicaid, you said yesterday to Senator Cassidy, Medicaid is fully paid for by the federal government, and it's not fee for service. That statement is false. Do you now understand that that statement is false, yes or no?
That Medicaid is paid for by the federal government, I believe that.
You said it is fully paid for. Medicaid, in fact, sir,
Well,
is
no,
a federal-state partnership.
The state has a partnership.
Right, so you were
Right.
wrong yesterday, so you're acknowledging that that statement was false, right?
I misstated something.
All right, good. So yesterday, when you were questioned about Medicaid, you repeatedly dodged questions by saying you want to make it better. Republicans are circulating a proposal that would end Medicaid expansion in some states, including in New Hampshire. So I will submit this for the record, but it is important to me to understand whether you believe that taking Medicaid away from 60,000 people in New Hampshire would make Medicaid better. And would it make New Hampshire healthy again? I'll submit that for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was struck by your comments in our meeting last week, where you made it abundantly clear to me that you intended to clean house of the professional scientist at the National Institutes of Health, which you know is headquartered in the state of Maryland, and employs thousands of hardworking Marylanders. I, for the record, believe in scientists, and I believe in doctors, and I trust them over politicians without medical degrees. You talked about bad science and bad scientists, and in fact, you specifically said to me in response to my question that you intend to replace the bad scientist with the good scientist. And so I want to ask you, in your opinion, what makes a scientist or a doctor qualified to serve at the National Institutes of Health?
A scientist who's devoted to empirical methodology, to evidence-based science, scientists who understand the importance of replication, the importance of publishing raw data and being open and transparent about it, the importance of publishing peer review. We have, NIH has overseen over the past several years the precipitous decline in American health. There's 91,000 people at HHS, and are you suggesting that some of them should not be held responsible for that decline? They were in charge of protecting our health.
Let me just insert here.
Let me just finish.
Well, let me just say
saying
this, because I only have 3 minutes left. I don't set the rules here, but I ask the questions. And the question is really whether you intend, as you said, to substitute essentially your judgment for the judgment of these professional scientists and doctors.
I'm not going to substitute my judgment for science. Of course, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do, listen, the New York Times just did an article last week talking about the fraud, the 20-year fraud, 800 fraudulent studies produced by NIH on amyloid plaques, and not allowing any other hypothesis about the cause of Alzheimer's.
Well, how
to
will
be
you
explored.
decide, Mr. Kennedy, which scientists
The ones
are
who
bad scientists? Are they the ones who disagree with you?
The ones who are corrupt, the ones who have been doing science like the amyloid plaque studies that were fraudulent.
Well, these doctors, let me ask you a question. Do you have a medical degree?
Do I know?
Okay, let me go to the next question. The Heritage Fund has compiled a watch list of federal employees to go after federal staff. Is there a watch list for federal staff at HHS?
Not that I know of.
Have you or has anyone in the administration developed a list of career scientists or federal staff that you would target for termination?
Not that I know of.
And let me just ask you another question. Now, your failed presidential campaign has been raising money to try and cover your debts. And you were questioned about this yesterday and failed to answer a question that Senator Warren asked you. And so I want to ask you again regarding these emails that you have sent to raise money. How much has your presidential campaign made fundraising off of this administration's complete disregard for the workforce at HHS?
Excuse me? I didn't hear the question. The last part.
How much money has your presidential campaign made off of fundraising, off of this administration's complete disregard for the workforce at HHS?
Zero.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 emails from this week and the week before regarding fundraising that you are currently doing through your presidential campaign.
Without objection.
And finally, I want to ask you, I have you said you were on a show on February 26, 2021, an interview with Dr. Judy Mikovits, where you said the following, and I quote, "We should not be giving Black people the same vaccine schedule that's given to whites because their immune system is better than ours." Can you please explain what you meant?
There's a series of studies, I think most of them by Poland, that show that to particular antigens that Blacks have a much stronger reaction. There's differences in reaction to different products by different races.
So I have 17 seconds left. Let me just ask you then, so what different vaccine schedule would you say I should have received? What different vaccine schedule should I have received?
I mean, the pollen article suggests that blacks need fewer antigens than.
This is
so
so
you get the
dangerous.
same measles vaccine. but
Mr. Kennedy, with all due respect, that is so dangerous. Your voice would be a voice that parents would listen to. That is so dangerous. I will be
The
voting
truth
against
is
your nomination because
science.
your views are dangerous to our state and to our country.
Early in the President Trump's term, you and colleagues sent 90 papers for review by people at NIH. They felt like the NIH folks felt that without exception, they were severely lacking methodologically, and/or found that they indeed showed the safety of these vaccines. We tried to engage Mr. Kennedy, but his colleagues refused to acknowledge the expertise of dozens of NIH scientists we made about those papers. Now, you're a smart guy. You're reading the medical literature, and you're coming up with the recent medical literature on certain issues. But here is both older article, summarizing lots of older articles that have come out since the original refuted Wakefield article in The Lancet regarding measles and autism. And here is somebody who, it's he said, but somebody who said that previously you've had this presented to you. So, back to me. I'm a doc, trying to understand. Convince me that you will become the public health advocate, but not just churn old information so that there's never a conclusion, as Senator Hassan suggested, but that will become the influencer for people to believe, no, there's 1.25 million kids studied and there's no autism associated with measles. You tell me, you see what my question is in there.
Senator, I'm going to be an advocate for strong science. You show me those scientific studies, and you and I can meet about it. And there are other studies as well, and I'd love to show those to you. There's a study that came out last week of 47,000 9-year-olds in the Medicaid system in Florida. I think a Louisiana scientist called Mawson that shows the opposite. So there are other studies out there. I just want to follow the science. And I will do, if the science says that I am wrong about what I've said in the past, as I said, I will publicly apologize. There's many times I've been wrong about science. If you look at my Instagram account, when I'm wrong, I apologize for it. And I say I was wrong. I don't have any problem. Science is a process of challenging hypotheses with new evidence. And scientists have to be able to admit when they're wrong. Epidemiological studies, the Institute of Medicine has said repeatedly in 2013, 2017, when they investigated this, has asked CDC to do certain studies, animal studies, bench studies, observational studies, studies of the vaccine safety data link. CDC has not done that. Oh, I want them to do that, and I want the best science. I can guarantee you, on my word of honor, that if you show me science that says that I'm wrong, I'm going to say I was wrong. I don't have any problem. There's nothing that would make me happier. We need to be able to look at the science and get IOM involved, the National Academy of Sciences. They're the ultimate arbiter of safety.
What was that?
One of the things we need to do, I think, is a subject that we haven't talked about here. Why don't we know what's causing this epidemic? Why hasn't the CDC been looking at other hypotheses to determine the etiology of why we've had this dramatic 1,000% increase in this disease that is destroying our kids? Is probably the biggest issue. Why don't we know the answer after 30 years of steady rises in autism rates? Why don't we know the answer to that? We should know the answer.
What was that? What was that last article? Did you mention
That article is by Mawson, Mawson.
And it's regarding measles and what?
No, it looks at the entire schedule and it says it's a study of 9-year-old boys, 47,000 9-year-old boys from the Florida healthcare data.
Okay, let me, Senator Sanders.
Thank you. And I find myself in the unusual and uncomfortable position of having to agree with Senator Cassidy's line of questioning. Mr. Kennedy, in an interview in July 2023, you stated, quote, "I do believe autism does come from vaccines." And you have, the end of quote, and you have praised a gentleman named Andrew Wakefield for his research. What studies, you talk about the need to be science-based, to get our information, good information to make decisions. What studies have you utilized to come to the conclusion that vaccines cause autism?
I'm happy to sit down with you.
No, please, just answer me that.
I mean, look at the Mawson study, Senator.
The what? Yeah.
Mawson, just look at that study.
Yeah, I will, and that was published.
But I don't want to, I wouldn't rest on a single study.
Right.
And all studies can be methodology.
Don't mean to be rude, I don't have a lot of time.
Just saying
You would not be, I just heard you say you could not be happier if you were proved wrong. Mr. Chairman, I asked to put into the record 16 studies done by scientists and doctors all over the world saying that vaccines do not cause autism. Are you happy with that objection?
Look at the IOM assessment of those 16 studies, Senator. The IOM has assessed them. But listen,
let me get to it. Don't have a lot of time. I apologize. I'm happy to talk to you at another time. Don't have a lot of time. Let's talk about COVID. And I just want clarity on the issue. And again, I apologize. You have to be brief. We don't have a lot of time. Scientists have estimated that the COVID vaccine saved 3 million lives. President Trump said the COVID vaccine was, quote, one of the great miracles of the ages, end quote. You have said the COVID vaccine was the deadliest vaccine ever made, end of quote. Was the COVID vaccine the deadliest vaccine ever made?
the reason I said that, Senator Sanders, is because there were more reports on the VAERS system, on the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which is the only surveillance system, that and VSafe. And there were more reports of injuries and deaths than any other, than all other vaccines combined.
But was it the scientists said it saved 3 million
According
lives?
to VAERS. I don't know, because we don't have a good surveillance system. So nobody
So you
can answer
disagree
that
with the
question.
scientific community that?
Oh, I'm agnostic because we don't have the science to make that determination.
Really? Okay. Prescription drug prices in America, as you know.
And by the way, I think President Trump did an extraordinary job on Warp Speed because he wasn't just focusing on that one intervention. He was focusing on
Called it a
whole
miracle, but you have cast doubts on its efficacy. All right. Prescription drugs. We're going to make America healthy. I agree with you that we need a revolution in the nature of food in America, physical exercise, et cetera. Very, very important. But there are people who are going to get sick, and they have to go to the doctor and find out why. 1 out of 4 Americans today cannot afford the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe because we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We made some progress under the Biden administration of negotiating prescription drug prices with pharma. First time that's ever happened. Now, yesterday you told me that the White House was going to issue something affirming their support for continuing those Medicare negotiations. Turned out not to be quite accurate. They came up with some bland statement, could have been written by pharma. Very specific questions. Do you believe and will you insist that Medicare continue to negotiate prices with the pharmaceutical industry so we can substantially lower prescription drug costs in America?
President Trump has made it very clear to me that he wants to negotiate prices.
Negotiate is a big word, Bobby. It's a big word.
It's the word you just used, Senator.
Yeah, but no, I use defend a particular law. Will you defend the law in the Inflation Reduction Act, which already is negotiating prescription drug prices.
President Trump wants us to negotiate drug price. He wants to
But you're
lower
not-
drug prices.
So you're not telling me that you will defend the law that we passed, which has already had significant success?
Well, the Congress, look, I'm going to comply with the law, Senator. Congress passed the law. I'm swearing an oath to the Constitution. I'm going to comply
You're
with the
going to have a
laws.
significant influence on healthcare policy if you are.
And I'm going to
confirmed.
comply with the laws.
Let me just say this in conclusion, Chairman Cassidy. President Trump and Mr. Kennedy are quite right when they say that our system is broken. They're right. Our economic system today is broken. 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Wages have been stagnant for American workers for 50 years. The economy is broken. You know what? Our political system is broken and corrupt. You have a handful of billionaires in both political parties who contribute huge amounts of money to elect candidates in this room throughout the United States Congress. That is a broken political system and a real threat to democracy. Our healthcare system is broken. And it's broken for some of the reasons that Mr. Kennedy indicated. We have not paid attention to the fact that we have massive amounts of chronic disease. We have not answered the question why in the richest country in the history of the world, our life expectancy is lower than it is in countries far poorer than we are. So I think in many ways, President Trump and Mr. Kennedy have asked some of the right questions. Problem is their answers will only make a bad situation worse. So let me ask Mr. Kennedy again. If we want to make America healthy, will you assure the American people that you will fight to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to every single American?
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee, do what every other major country does? That's a simple question, Bobby.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
Because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money.
contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
You were the
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie,
PACs.
you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in the industry.
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but you have not answered, last question. You have not answered my question.
Mr. Chairman, we're 3
Ask
minutes.
you a question.
How do we make America healthy if you don't guarantee health
Chairman,
care
we're
to all
literally
people?
3 minutes over here now.
Well, so are other
How long
people.
does it keep going? At some time, you're just battering the witness,
Not
Bernie.
battering the witnesses. I'm
Yes,
trying
you
to get
are.
an
And
answer.
you're getting upset at him. You're going at him just like anybody else would.
We'll come to order. Bernie's going over. Before I ever entered politics, before I was ever thinking about running for office, I practiced medicine for 30 years. I worked in public hospitals in California, Louisiana, specializing in liver disease, caring for those who otherwise would not have had a specialist. If you will, dedicating my life to saving lives. That is, being a doctor. That ethic guides me now. In my opening statement, I told the story of my patient, an 18-year-old girl with acute liver failure from hepatitis B being air ambulanced to LSU Shreveport Hospital for a liver transplant. Now, let me finish the story. Her mother wasn't allowed to fly in the helicopter, so her mother drove the 3 hours from Baton Rouge to Shreveport. Now, when she arrived, they let her visit her daughter before she went back to the OR. And the mom goes in to say a prayer, squeezes the daughter's hand. The daughter's eyes open, and she said, "Mama?" and the daughter began to recover. Powerful story with a happy ending. But as a doctor, I saw endings not so happy. I just had a friend text me, 2 children died in an intensive care unit in a Baton Rouge hospital from vaccine-preventable diseases this past month. So my concern is that if there's any false note, any undermining of a mama's trust in vaccines, another person will die from a vaccine-preventable disease. Now, you've got a megaphone. Maybe you and Bernie, Bobby and Bernie. Of everybody in this room, the 2 of you have the biggest followings, tremendous credibility. And with that influence comes a great responsibility. Now, my responsibility is to learn, try and determine if you can be trusted to support the best public health. A worthy movement called MAHA to improve the health of Americans, or to undermine it, always asking for more evidence and never accepting the evidence that is there. I looked at the article from Dr. Mawson, and it seems to have some issues. I'll just put that to the side. And that is why I've been struggling with your nomination. There are issues ultra-processed food, obesity, we are simpatico. We're completely aligned. And as someone who has discussed immunizations with thousands of people, I understand that mothers want reassurance that the vaccine their child is receiving is necessary, safe, and effective. We agree on that point, the 2 of us, but we've approached it differently. And I think I can say that I've approached it using the preponderance of evidence to reassure, and you have approached using selected evidence to cast doubt. Now, put differently, we're about the same age. Does a 70-year-old man, 71-year-old man who has spent decades criticizing vaccines and who's financially vested in finding fault with vaccines, can he change his attitudes and approach now that he'll have the most important position influencing vaccine policy in the United States? Will you continue what you have been, or will you overturn a new leaf at age 70?